Are we just supposed to like guess to get there? Like that's a crazy thing for us to have to just figure out. Ladies, gentlemen, and those with the good sense to do away with the whole notion, I welcome you to the premier audio medium for all your Fazbear entertainment needs. The Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. Note, FFPP is not responsible for any loss of appetite, disinterest, dismemberment, or other legally classified statuses. So strap in and enjoy. Hello, welcome to the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. I'm your host of the Toast, where I toast you to talk about 5 Nights at Freddy's like we usually do. And look, I'm not immune to propaganda. I'm not. Stool posted something weird. We're going to talk about it. For those of you who didn't see, Stool posted this. When was this? June 29th. So as of recording this about 4 days ago. And what? So I want to get out the gate. It's a spot the difference of a rendered like water park room looking thing. It's weird because it looks like it's just a pool, but there's floaties, pool noodles, barrels, benches, a whole bunch of stuff. The text of this post, which we have to bring up, is no secrets, no hidden clues, no teaser, no countdown. Just 3 differences, ... probably eyes emoji. How fast can you spot them? And true to its word, there are 3 differences between these 2 images. Now, I get it. The post literally says, no secrets, no hidden clues, no teaser, no countdown. But it does say just 3 differences, probably. And I've scanned these images. I really have. There are only 3 differences. So my question is, if there's probably only 3 differences, where's the probably coming in? They could have just said just 3 differences, and it's like, okay, they made a spot the difference for no reason, sure. But there's a probably there with an eyes emoji, which tells me look into something. What is this? What is this telling us? Is this a teaser for the next FNAF game? Because we know they're working on at least one FNAF game. There is a sequel, not a 3, but a 2. And, you know, that's the big thing they're currently working on. But as Steelwool has said in interviews, they're working on multiple projects at once now. So we know Steelwool's working on something FNAF related. And then we get this vaguely, you know, this is the art style they use for the FNAF games. You know, it's brighter. It's got more color to it. But, like, that's the rendering they would use for a FNAF game. The question is, though, like, what the hell is this? Like, what is this? It's just a pool with tubes and pool noodles. What am I looking at? Well, I hate to be this guy. We've been saying that a Chica's Party World focused game makes sense for a Ruin 2, Sister Location 2, or Secret of the Mimic 2. Any of those could be Chica's Secret Party. Chica's Party World. Because of things like Chica's Secret Party and a whole litany of other things. And if this is Chica's Party World, how fitting would it be that we have floaties of chickens in the pool? They could have been ducks, which would make more sense, but that's a chicken. Now, that's not yellow, it's not Chica, but it is a chicken. Is this tenuous at best? Yes. But that's also the FNAF floor. Like, that's the floor in FNAF restaurants, that black and white checkerboard. So we have the FNAF floor, we have chicken floaties. Is this not a teaser, but just a location from the next FNAF game? Right, because here's the thing. They said there's no secrets to find in this image. There's no hidden clues in this image. This is not a teaser, and there's no countdown. All of that can be true, while also this being a screenshot from a location of the next FNAF game. Because they followed up with just 3 differences. Probably. That probably, you know, there's just 3 differences. But then the probably tells us that there's more to what's going on than just a spot the difference. It's just not a secret, hidden clue, teaser, or countdown. I think by definition it's a teaser, but still, the probably could be, you know, but this is an image from the next FNAF game that we're working on. And if so, we gotta talk about it. Because like I've been saying, Chica's Party World makes a lot of sense for the next FNAF game. for more and more reasons, you know. We keep getting more and more information that kind of leans us to that direction. So is this Chica's Party World? Maybe. Maybe. Like, I want, as much as I desperately want to make a video about this because we haven't had real FNAF news in like a year, there's nothing to go off of here. They're right when they say there's nothing here, dude. There's nothing here, dude. But let's write a little fan fiction for lack of a better term. Let's post like a deranged Reddit user and let's analyze this. So, yes, it's just a pool, but if there's FNAF floor and we have this chicken, we can assume the chicken's supposed to be Chica. Why is that important? Well, there's, wouldn't you know it, other tubes here, other inner tubes. And what's important to bring up, what's actually really important to bring up is Glamrock Chica, because that's the only white variant of Chica we have, and there's a white chicken. But what's more important to bring up is these inner tubes account for, nearly every color on Glamrock Chica. Look at the one on the right, the pink and black with the green handles. Wouldn't you know it, Glamrock Chica's leggings, pink and black, and green and black. The same pink, and roughly the same green. Then we have her guitar, which is a dark blue. And wouldn't you know it, a dark blue inner tube. The only one not accounted for is this light blue and red. That's not on this. That, admittedly, I have no good answer for light blue and red. But still, two of those inner tubes share design colors with Glamrock Chica. And I think this is important to bring up, right? Because one of the things that like threw a lot of us off with Security Breach is like, wow, Chica has a different design. Like, Glamrock Freddy is also redesigned, but that's still like basically Freddy with some makeup on. Like that's just Freddy with a little bit of zhuzh given to him. Glamrock Chica is completely different color scheme, different vibe to her, different role of the band. In FNAF 1, she's just like also a singer. Now she plays guitar. Like, does she play guitar or bass? No, she plays guitar because Monty plays bass. Yeah. So that's all up till now got unexplained. Now, we didn't really need it to be explained. Realistically, the reason could just be, they wanted to redesign her to fit the Glamrock aesthetic, and yellow's hard to work with, sure. But now that we're in the space where, Secret of the Mimic is telling us more and more and more about FNAF in general, especially Security Breach, and Fiona possibly being the AI controlling the Security Breach Pizzaplex, the idea that there was a Murray's Costume Manor or Chica's Party World design of Chica that Glamrock Chica is much closer to is really interesting. That being said, we see Chica's Party World in Murray's Costume Manor, and it's just Chica. So, like, where is that coming from then? Unless this isn't Chica's Party World, but this is the second Pizzaplex. This is Security Breach 2. Either a rebuilt Pizzaplex or new Pizzaplex. Regardless, these colors fit the Glamrock aesthetic very well. And if it's just the Glamrocks, wouldn't you know it? Wait a minute. You know who's blue and red? Like that unexplained inner tube, that bright red and bright blue? Glamrock Bonnie, who's bright blue with a bright red jumpsuit. And you know what? What's this third tube? Dark blue and yellow. Dark blue and yellow. Well, that's not Monty. Not Roxy. She's like purple and green. If anything, Roxy might be the one on the right, but that's so close to Chica's leggings. I mean, but if anything, you could argue that the one on the right is Roxanne Wolf, but like she's more purple, not pink, like that is. Dark blue and that dark blue and yellow color combination looks so familiar to me too. It's not Glamrock Freddy. If anything, actually, I said Glamrock Bonnie. That light blue and red, Glamrock Freddy has in spades. He's got the light blue and red makeup. Where is that? That blue and yellow is so familiar. Does anybody on the thread point this out? Did anybody on the thread point this out? No, everyone's just doing the yeah, everyone's just doing spot the difference. Yeah, no. Okay. Blue and yellow. What's also interesting, the difference here is that the tube on the ground that looks like Glamrock Freddy gets replaced by that blue and yellow. That is so familiar. That's bothering me so much. Blue and yellow. What does like DJ Music Man look like? No, it's like blue and pink. Glamrock Hippo. Because I mean Freddy gets replaced with him. We don't. What's that? We don't have that's a newspaper, a magnet. Do we have an official color scheme for Glamrock Hippo? We have merch, but I don't know if that's official merch. No, we don't. I was going to say, for a second I got excited because someone had a design that was yellow on the shoulder blades, but we don't know. We don't know. It's either red or yellow because he's got the flower, but even still, there's no blue. No, without like the stretch of like his eyes. Blue and yellow security breach. And is there anything that's blue and yellow? There's moon. That's not really the right color for that. Because he's got the yellow stars. Hold on. FNAF moon. It's not quite right. Maybe it's the lighting. Let me get one without lighting. I mean, it's similar. It's definitely similar, but that's not what I'm thinking of, I don't think. Still, two inner tubes that are like 1-to-1 with Glamrock color schemes, a yellow chicken, Chica, and then this blue and yellow mystery enigma thing. Like, this is kind of similar to the Security Breach lineup. Is this Security Breach 2, and is this the pool at Security Breach 2? Maybe. I'm convincing myself more and more as I talk about the colors of the inner tubes. I hadn't thought about that until now. But, like, man. I hope this means we're getting more teasers. Right? I hope this means we're getting more news and more fun stuff. Because, hey, it's been a while. Secret of the Movement came out a year ago, and I'm not expecting them to pump out a game every year. I mean, it'd be nice, but like that, I'm sure that would be hell to make good games that frequently. But like some news, anything, a teaser would be pretty cool. Even if the game comes out like a year from now, just like something to work off of would be pretty cool. But yeah, I saw this teaser. I'm like, we got to talk about this. We frankly have to talk about this. But let's move on to questions. So our first question comes from Patreon. As always, I take questions via Patreon and email. Email's free, but the Patreon questions are answered on a priority. It's one of the many things that I am trying to offer patrons. Speaking of, I actually did just change how the videos are working on Patreon to make it a bit more accessible. The way the current tiers work is the $5 tier does get you access to all the ad-free videos I put out. So the main theories, the podcasts, and I'm going to try to get the second channel videos up there as well, the scripted ones. But the $10 tier gives them the theories 2 days early. I know I hope that's, a worth a deal. I'm bad at selling it because I feel self-conscious about selling it, but I hope it's a worthwhile deal. And it does very, very much support the channel. So I do appreciate that. But the questions are answered on priority for $5 and up members. And we have one ready to go for today's podcast, that being from Blast, he, him. I'm baffled by Fredbear versus Golden Freddy. I know it was popular for a long time to effectively consider them the same character, but with Chica's Secret Party World, it feels like it's relevant to bring up. The only distinction I've ever known is to make the color of the hat and tie. Purple for Fredbear, black for Golden Freddy. So what might it mean that they're different? What's the significance of the Secret of the Mimic prototype having a purple tie and a black hat? He does, doesn't he? What a weird choice. Yeah, no, I thank you for your question, Blast. It's one of those weirder aspects of the franchise of like, why do we have purple tie, purple hat, and black tie, black hat, and now purple tie, black hat, you know? Which, frankly, I think purple tie, black hat makes the most sense, but these do seem to be in some way different characters. Because, you know, you look at the Golden Freddy sprite, and the Golden Freddy model, it's black hat, black tie, and then there are certain Fredbears with the purple. Then there's, you know, Psychic Friend Fredbear, who has purple hat, purple tie. It's like, oh, interesting. So I'd always, you know, similar to you, I'd been taking it that Fredbear himself had a purple hat and a purple tie, but when Agony got involved and like it became possessed, that's where we get the black hat and the black tie. However, you know, you look at like stage, and you know, that gets back to like stage 1 where he's got a brown hat, which I just pray that's an inconsistency. I just hope that's a mistake, you know. But you look at like stage 1 has that black tie, black hat, but like shouldn't be possessed yet. And then you look at the FNAF 4 cutscenes where it's a purple tie and a purple hat. So it's like, and, you know, there's these differences over and over and over again. Like you said, I tend to think it's a Golden Freddy versus Fredbear situation. Where when Fredbear is not possessed, like the actual... Ow! Oh, I had my feet up on the treadmill. And it slipped, and I just kicked the fuck out of, like, the ankle bone that sticks out. Holy shit, that hurts. I'm feeling to throw up. Oh, my God. You can cut this out. Oh, maybe leave it in. It's kind of funny. Like I was saying, Fredbear, the character, seems to be the one with the purple hat and the purple bow tie. Versus, like, when Fredbear becomes possessed, it turns black because of the possession. Does that make sense with every other character we've ever seen in the franchise? No, it doesn't. But maybe that's why Golden Freddy's spirit is the one he should not have killed. Golden Freddy had more agony than everybody else, and it visually shows on the Fredbear animatronic. Maybe. You know, it's a logical explanation without any good reasoning behind it. You know, it's one that, like, it lines up with what we think about animatronics, it lines up with what we think about possession, but, like... Are we just supposed to, like, guess to get there? Like, that's a crazy thing for us to have to just figure out. And, like, another weird thing about the purple bow tie thing is Glamrock Freddy. You know, the more damage he takes, or maybe the more agony he gets infected with, depending on how you want to interpret it, his bow tie starts turning purple. That's weird, right? It's like, okay, well, is this trying to say that William's influence is getting back in because purple guy? Or is this trying to say that, like, Glamrock Freddy was painted like Fredbear and then painted like Glamrock Freddy? Both of those are weird. Both of those are weird options, but there's no good reason for his bow tie to be purple. It's just a strange detail. So you're right to point out, like, this is weird. On top of that, you bring in Chica's Secret Party, where in the end it says, all her uninvited guests, Fredbear, Gray Man, Bonnie, and Golden Freddy, move through the halls dancing. So differentiating Golden Freddy and Fredbear, seemingly saying they can exist at the same time. But this is like a weird time flux minigame where things exist when they shouldn't. So I think, it's weird that they're both there, but you definitely could make the argument that it's just Fredbear in two different points of time. That is a fair argument to make. I'm not sure. I'm really not. Because the only other argument I can find is that there are two suits for some reason, and one of them is Fredbear, and then the other one becomes Golden Freddy. But that makes even less sense. That really does. Like, why would there be two suits? And, like, why... It just doesn't add up in a good way. It does not add up in a satisfying way. Unless, the MCM Fredbear we see is Fredbear, but Golden Freddy is a separate suit that was planned for Fazbear. I don't know. If we want to go the route of like William Afton trying to prove he's better than Edwin Murray, he sees the Fredbear Springlock and he's like, I can make a better Fredbear. And then he makes Golden Freddy, which is just an objectively worse one. Maybe. I don't know. I think the option that makes the most sense is it's Fredbear with a purple hat and a purple bow tie. And then when it gets possessed by the vengeful spirit, it turns into Golden Freddy. It's the thing that frankly just makes the most sense to me. There are other arguments to make, but I don't think they make as much sense. But thank you for your question. So the rest of our questions were sent to the email. That's Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast @gmail.com. It's in the description to copy and paste because it's paid to type out. Our first question comes from Leisha, she. I have a solution to the puppet being the vengeful spirit from episode 140. In the novels, Charlie has a twin brother, Sammy. What if in the games, Sammy is Cassidy? It has been questioned if he's in the games or not. What if he was in Golden Freddy all along? This could mean that Charlie, the one he should not have killed, is her twin brother. As a twin, I think I'd be extremely pissed off if someone offed me and then went back and offed my brother. Charlie could have enacted UCN as vengeance for her brother. This also can possibly resolve some of the issues people have with UCN referring to the one you should not have killed with masculine pronouns, and the image used to represent them being a boy, as well as Golden Freddy imagery and Death Coin not working on him. It's obviously a really big reach, but in my little head, it makes sense. First of all, your head's not little, and it's not that big of a reach. Thank you for your question. So, once again, logically, I agree with this. I logically, because I don't agree with this, but I just want to say logically, I agree with this. Because, like you mentioned, in the books, it's Sammy and Charlie. There's siblings. So the idea that Golden Freddy and the Marionette are possessed by a pair of siblings, that's really compelling storytelling. And that's why, they're so connected. That's why they're both so weird. That's why one is the vengeful spirit and one is the one he should not have killed. This lines up really, really well in a really cool and satisfying way. The problem, immediately, I'm not going to bury the lead here. The problem on the face of it is that Henry monologue. Because Henry gives a monologue at the end of FNAF 6 where he addresses pretty much everyone who's dying. He looks at the little souls trapped in the prisons of his making, and he's like, I hope you give up your prisons and rest. Those are not made for you. You don't belong here. He turns to William. He's like, William, you're going to burn in hell, and I can't wait to see you down there. And then he turns to Charlotte. He goes, and then finally, my daughter. I knew you wouldn't. I knew you would not find peace just being here. You would not find peace just moving on. You needed to help people. I knew you were going to stay around and do that. And then he talks to us. He's like, my volunteer. This is way he talks to us earlier. He's like, this is where it ends for all of us. And he never brings up Sammy, who is there. He's either part of Springtrap or Scraptrap at that point, or he's in Molten Freddy. So, I'm going to stand up as I talk because I'm yawning. If Golden Freddy is Sammy and the puppet is Charlotte, ostensibly they're both there at FNAF 6, and Henry dedicates a good minute of his monologue to Charlotte and saying how he loves her and she's so strong and brave, and he's going to try to help her move on now. And then he just forgets about his son. that if Sammy is Golden Freddy, he just forgets that his son is there too, which, according to the books, is fairly canon, because in the books, Sammy exists, and after the death of Charlotte, he's so consumed with grief, he not only ignores his wife and son to build a robot version of his daughter, but then he programs that robot version of his daughter to think her brother is dead so that her memories make sense, which essentially means he's willingly going to never see his son again and tell his robot daughter that his son is dead. His son, who I cannot stress enough, is alive. It's a lot. But in that way, it lines up with the book. No, but that's really where my biggest problem comes in, because for Sammy to be Cassidy, right? For Sammy to be this vengeful spirit, this one who should not have killed, it would need to either retcon the Henry speech, which I'm fairly certain Scott is afraid to touch because he's aware how much we all love that Henry speech, or Henry needs to have just either think that Sammy has moved on before FNAF 6, or he forgot about Sammy and he doesn't really care about Sammy. And I don't know which option is more likely at that point. Because you could make the argument he thinks Sammy's moved on because he knows Charlotte's still there because of the puppet. He doesn't know Sammy's around because the Golden Freddy is such like a background character to him. So maybe he just doesn't know Sammy hasn't moved on, so it's not relevant to bring up right now. You could make that argument, I guess. But yeah, the big problem here is that, and even if you want to say like, oh, we get the name Cassidy from the book. Well, like we said, that's just a name. We don't even get the name Charlotte or Sammy in the games. So Charlotte's name could be Cassidy. Sammy's name could be Cassidy. It could be Cassidy Emily, which is a horrible name, It's possible that, it's Charlotte and Cassidy, brother and sister. But either Henry thinks he's already moved on or has forgotten about him by FNAF 6, which is pretty tough. If you want to go with the argument of he thinks that Cassie's already moved on by the time of FNAF 6, so that's why Henry doesn't mention him, then yeah, it works then, because at the end of the day, you're not changing the narrative that much. It's still, there is a child who dies inside of Golden Freddy and goes on to become the vengeful spirit and does UCN as part of revenge. Like that is all still the same. That is all still exactly the same. It's just now it's Henry's son, which is like interpersonally huge, but like the plot still happens the same way. But yeah, it just really comes down to why didn't Henry mention Sammy then in the monologue, or does he just not like him? But again, if he thinks Sammy has moved on, it kind of works. So thank you for your question. Again, not a huge reach, and your head's not little. Up next, we have a question from Emmy, she, they. Here's my question. Could the Chica voice line in UCN, I was the first, I've seen everything, be the spirit of Fiona talking through Chica? We know Fiona was designed/created Chica, and we speculate that her spirit, or F10N4, is somehow attached to the characters she designed. I've been confused by the line if it were to come from Susie, because sure, she may have been the first MCI victim, but that means she's seen everything. But if the line comes from Fiona, it would make sense, because she is the first death in the timeline, likely caused by Afton. She is the first, and by virtue of living on through F10N4 / the Mimic / however she may still be around, she would have seen everything that transpired after her death, and through the whole series. Fiona is the first, and has seen everything. I will say I'm not sure if Scott had any idea of the Mimic and the Murrays when making UCN. Regardless, it's a really satisfying conclusion for me. Thank you for your question. I kind of do agree with this, right? Because like you said, when Scott is making Ultimate Custom Night, does he know who Fiona Murray is? Absolutely the fuck not. I don't think he planned about the Murrays until starting work on Help Wanted. I think during Help Wanted, the Murrays were an idea. The Murrays were part of that process. But before Help Wanted, I don't think the Murrays were a thought that crossed his mind. That being said, if Chica at the time was meant to be the MCI and meant to be this, Susie was the first victim of the MCI, so in that way, I was the first, I've seen everything. Sure, you can make that argument. It's a tough argument. I've seen everything is weird. But, you could make that argument. And I think that is the accepted argument there. But you're right. But yeah, if William Afton caused the Fall Fest fire, then Fiona was the first victim of William Afton, and she did see everything that happened after. At least F10N4 did. So you're right to point out that, if anyone was the first and saw everything, it's Fiona. And Fiona did design Chica, and we keep seeing things that benefit Fiona and / try to get the Mimic over to her side, done by Chica and or Foxy throughout the franchise. So seemingly the characters that Fiona designed, she's acting her will through. Not to mention, the voice of Withered Chica is not that far off from the voice of Fiona. If I remember correctly, let me pull up a clip. Yeah, again, they're kind of just both adult women, so it's not it sounds just like her, but again, of the many voice lines we have, the idea that Fiona's voice lines and Withered Chica's voice lines sound similar in that way, it again lines up. There's no Chica, sometimes people give her a little chicken voice. She doesn't really sound like Glamrock Chica. She doesn't really sound like any other Chica voice. She sounds like Withered Chica. Granted, we never hear that version of Chica speak outside of UCN, but that version of Chica is the one that sounds the most like Fiona. And I think that's really I think there's a really fun way to argue this. I think ostensibly it would technically be a retcon, because I agree that I think when UCN came out, it was just referring to Susie. But, you know, it's kind of the best case scenario for a retcon where it's not changing the game itself, it's changing the interpretation. You know, it's changing the authorial intent, which like isn't the game. So you could argue we were just wrong until now. But I think it is like it's a retcon of intentions in that way, where it's like, you know, at the time, Withered Chica was supposed to just be talking about how Susie was the first victim, but it makes more sense to be Fiona. And at this point, maybe Fiona is the correct interpretation there. So, thank you for your question. Funnily enough, our next one's from another Emmy. From our next question is from Emmy, she, her. If both Happiest Day and the FNAF 6 Fire ending are canon, how do they fit together? Happiest Day appears to free the MCI souls, but then FNAF 6 implies they're still present in Molten Freddy until the fire. What's the explanation that allows both events to happen in the same timeline? Thank you for your question. I have a whole video on this. If I remember, I'll link it here. But my explanation is that Happiest Day and FNAF World are the same event. It is the spirits getting together to help the remaining lost souls get their memories back so they can all move on. They are retellings of the same event. And in that way, I believe that FNAF World and Happiest Day take place during and immediately after the FNAF 6 fire. Once everyone is in one location and they're all burnt together, that is when their souls have the weakest connection to the world as possible, and that's when Charlotte and some of the other souls get to work in helping them move on. So that's my explanation, is that Happiest Day happens right after the fire. Because there's no... the thing to keep in mind is that the Happiest Day minigames take place in FNAF 3. The Happiest Day minigames happen in FNAF 3, but there's absolutely no indication on when the Happiest Day occurs. Unless you're arguing that the Happiest Day only happens because Michael Afton is touching his not touchscreen security camera iPad and like poking at the screen, and that allows spirits to move on. Like, this is non-diegetic. This is something the player is doing to show us some lore, right? This is not happening in-game. And in that way, we don't know when Happiest Day is happening. So my guess is that Happiest Day and FNAF World take place at the same time after the FNAF 6 fire. It's the only way that makes sense to me anyway. But thank you for your question. And if you want more information on that, again, full video there. Our next one comes from Jason, they, them. Which of the Mimic's mascots on Secret of the Mimic is your favorite? It's a fun question. I also want to add on least favorite because, hey, I think, surprisingly, because I thought it was going to be, when talking about like least favorite mascot suits in Secret of the Mimic, and by least favorite, I just mean like scariest. I'm going to say scariest and one that I love the most. So scariest for me, I thought it was going to be the Jester, but honestly, it's that lemur. That lemur really gets me. Something about him freaks me out. That and, for lack of a better word, the naked mushroom, which I hate saying it like that, but like the Mycelium Men costume, when it's just the plush underliner and not the like colored up version, that thing looks horrifying to me. Yeah, it looks like a skull almost. Like, what are we doing? But as far as favorite, and like the one I love and adore, the one I want a little plushie of, it's Sharpay. Like, did anybody have a doubt that it would be the little doggy? It's such a little doggy. I love that little doggy. Speaking of other horrifying ones, Hedgehog Hudgy is terrifying, and the mask is horrifying. I hate Hedgehog Hudgy so much. But that little doggy, Sharpay, love them. Love them. But thank you for your question. A bit of a shorter, lighter one. And our last question for today from Jay, he, him. If William had access to the Mimic since taking over Edwin's factory, why did he focus so much on Remnant? Remnant/possession led to so many trial and errors, yet he had the schematics of the Mimic and knew how it functioned / how to utilize it. Seemed like the easier route for him to use the Mimic to bring back Elizabeth and rebuild the Crying Child. So, thank you for your question. I think it comes down to that's not what that is. You know what I mean? Like, it comes down to using the Mimic to rebuild the Crying Child and Elizabeth isn't bringing them back. it's making a fake version of them. Like, that's the whole point of Secret of the Mimic, is that making the mimic act like Fiona and act like David isn't actually bringing them back, it's just helping you grieve. To actually bring someone back, you would need Remnant. Like, it's not the same thing. And that's kind of the whole the story of Secret of the Mimic, is that Edwin, for a time thought it was, or at least tried to convince himself that it was. But then, once he finally settles on, obviously this isn't the same thing, then he's able to grieve and move on, but it's too late because he's already made his bed and it ends up killing him. So I think that William Afton sees this and is willing to use the mimic for trial and error, or like learning about it. But if and when William Afton learns about Remnant and like spiritual energy and possession, that's bringing them back. Frankly, I would argue the way to truly bring someone back in this universe is to have them possess a mimic-powered animatronic. Because the whole point of the mimic is it can basically pretend to be a human incredibly convincingly. So if you can get a good enough silicone human suit, put it on a mimic, and then have somebody possess the endoskeleton, they're basically back. Like, that's basically like a robot body for your mind and soul. You know what I mean? Like, that's basically it's scientifically bringing someone back from the dead. And I think I think William realizes this. Like, I think that's why the Remnant experiments happen in the sister location bunker, which is the closest that FNAF ever gets to, like, the closest that Fazbear ever gets to MCM and the Mimic is the sister location bunker. I think William knows this. I think William's end goal, and that's why Sister Location had all those human face robots in the main room, is because Sister Location's goal was, if I can make a very convincing human animatronic, put a mimic endoskeleton inside of it, and have somebody I know possess it, I've brought them back to life. I think that's William's whole goal, and I think he's still trying that as Glitchtrap, even if that's not William, because of the whole Vanessa Googling realistic human silicone mask or whatever she Googles in the AR emails. I think that's still the ultimate goal, is a mimic endoskeleton in a realistic human costume being possessed by one soul. That's basically coming back from the dead. That seems to be the goal there. So that, to answer your question, I think it's both. I think he already has the mimic, and that's why he's not really focusing on it. That being said, I don't think William ever successfully creates a second mimic. I think that technology is above him. So that he's also still trying to recreate that, and that's why we see the fun times exist. But I think William's goal is the mimic plus a remnant. Kind of like how possession in general, in the video I made last week, is, spiritual energy plus intelligence. In that same way, William Afton probably knows that at some point, and that's what he's trying to do. But thank you for your question. Once again, if you have questions you want to answer in the podcast, if you want me to definitely answer them at priority, you can go to Patreon. But if you just want to send them in and I'll get to them when I can, you can email me at Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast at gmail.com, which is in the description, copy and paste. But until next time, as always, you've been watching the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast, where the pizza abilities are endless. We hope to enjoy your future patronage. Bye-bye for now.